evening, everyone. I am Wendy Jackson with DePaul University. I'm in the STEM Center there. I'm a former middle school science teacher, a once and always scientist, and in fact, I was born that way. So I know that I am preaching to the choir here, but still, these are such important messages, and we need to make sure that we all share a vision. So it really is a wonderful and exciting time to be in K-12 science education. It's because of the opportunities afforded by these next generation science standards that we are confident will be adopted in Illinois shortly. Knowing that these new standards were forthcoming, the Chicago Community Trust funded a working group of 19 people to consider the opportunities and challenges of these standards for science education in Illinois. And I know a number of my co-authors are here this evening, and I would just ask you to please stand so everyone can see who some of my other co-authors were. So this group met over the course of several months to develop and present a picture of a school system that is fully aligned with the next generation science standards. And in our report, the green one, we described the hallmarks that would characterize a classroom, a school, and a district that have made a complete transition to the NGSS. And in the report, we also consider the hallmarks of partnerships that are essential for supporting a school system. Of course, all of these hallmarks begin with casting and catching a shared vision for all students. This vision lays out what we expect students to know and to be able to do by the end of 12th grade. So what are some of these expectations? First, all students will have developed an appreciation for the beauty, the wonder, and the utility of science. All students will have sufficient knowledge to engage in public discussions and debates on related issues. All students will be careful and wise consumers of scientific and technological information related to their everyday lives. All students will be able to continue to learn about science outside of school and even after they leave formal education. Finally, all students will have the knowledge and skills to enter the careers of their choice, whether that's in science and engineering or any other field. So really, the next generation science standards are a call to action, and all students must receive a K-12 science education that is rigorous, continuous, and uncompromising, because this really has become a matter of equity in the 21st century. This is a civil rights issue moving forward. And science learning should not be reserved for just a select group of students. Every student, regardless of their background, their ability, their grade level, or their school, has the right to the same high-quality science education as any other student. Science is not just a subject in school, it is a way of knowing about the natural world that empowers all people. So what is different about the NGSS? What are the changes or shifts that these new standards will bring? So you've already seen this schematic before. The NGSS are based on the realization that scientific practices, concepts, and ideas cannot be extricated from one another for science education to be effective. And the authors of the NGSS invoke the image of a rope where the three intertwined strands represent the three dimensions of science education. The first strand represents the science and engineering practices, or what scientists actually do. The second strand represents the cross-cutting concepts, which are the threads that weave together ideas from across all of the sciences. And then finally, the third represents the disciplinary core ideas, or what we think of as the traditional content such as biology or earth science. And for science education to be effective, the strands must remain intertwined. The NGSS also make explicit that we should focus on fewer ideas in greater depth, rather than trying to cover a large number of topics superficially. The NGSS clearly articulate how the depth of student understanding should progress from kindergarten through high school. They make clear that not all scientific topics will be taught in K-12. Rather, students will acquire the knowledge and tools to continue to learn about science after graduation. And very importantly, explicit connections to mathematics and literacy are embedded in the NGSS. For example, the cross-cutting concept of proportion, scale, and quantity is easily linked to the mathematical practices in the Common Core state standards for mathematics. Further, many of the practices in science, such as constructing arguments from evidence, they have parallels in the Common Core state standards for English language arts. Most importantly, science is framed as interconnected to other content areas and not as a competitor. The NGSS make clear that science must be taught in a way that allows students to see the connections to their real lives, connections to the natural world around them, as well as the engineered environment should be emphasized. This will engage students and help them see the personal and the societal value of science. The NGSS comprises a series of performance expectations. Rather than simply describing what students should know by the end of each grade or grade band, the NGSS that makes clear that students should be able to demonstrate their understanding of all of the three intertwined dimensions. And these are some of the actual verbs from the performance expectations in the NGSS. So what are these hallmarks that characterize a fully realized school system? And here I only have a few minutes, but I will describe a few of the hallmarks from our report that cut across the sections of such a system. We need knowledgeable teachers who understand all the dimensions of the NGSS, the science and engineering practices, the cross-cutting concepts, and the disciplinary core ideas, and they know how to intertwine these three dimensions effectively in their classroom. Teachers are able to enhance their knowledge through effective professional development, which must be coherent, frequent, and sustained over time, ideally 3 to 5 years to fully understand the NGSS. The professional development enables teachers to acquire that new knowledge, to apply it to their practice, and to reflect on their learning with their colleagues. And a fully realized school system recognizes that collaboration time is essential for systemic, sustained, positive change to occur. As is made clear in the NGSS, science is a social endeavor. Thus, science teachers should have opportunities to plan together and to share their successes and challenges with their colleagues. A fully realized system helps put the right curriculum and instructional materials into the hands of teachers. These are chosen by a team of experts, including teachers with the correct expertise, who are thoroughly familiar with the NGSS. And as Marty just said, most teachers are not trained to be curriculum writers, they're trained to be teachers. And even fewer teachers have the time to create a curriculum or assemble a set of instructional materials de novo. But fortunately, instructional materials already exist that are well aligned with the type of science learning called for by the NGSS. And with time, they will be revised to embody the three intertwined strands of the NGSS more fully. And some of the instructional materials that we believe are aligned with the intent of the NGSS are actually listed in the report. fully realized system understands that the most effective way to assess students is to continually gauge their understanding through authentic, formative assessments embedded in the curriculum and based in daily classroom instruction using everyday instructional materials. Both formative and summative assessments include performance-based tasks in which students demonstrate their understanding of the concepts and ideas while engaged in the practices, all three dimensions. Such a system also knows that science is not about getting the right answers, but is instead about developing an understanding of the natural world by using evidence to support claims and by engaging in critique scientific ideas. Multiple methods for assessing students are important to allow all students, regardless of English language or learning ability, to demonstrate and communicate their conceptual understanding. A school system that provides a high-quality science education aligned with the NGSS ensures that every student has the time necessary for meeting these higher standards and understands that carrying out science-related activities will not result in learning unless students have the time to internalize, explain, and justify their understanding and engage in discourse about science with their peers. Such a system supports the implementation of the NGSS consistently every day in every classroom. It recognizes that student understanding builds and progresses in a coherent and sustained manner over 13 years, with students developing an ever more sophisticated understanding over time. So these are just some of the hallmarks outlined in the report. Again, it's the longest of the three reports, but we hope that you will find the sections in there that apply to you. The most fundamental point to make is that in order for a school system to become fully realized, every person, every policy, and every action must be pointing in the same direction toward the NGSS. A system will fail if any component is pointed in a different direction. So who must act? Who are the stakeholders? Well, this is, of course, an incomplete list of the entities who must work together with every person and every institution, sharing the same vision for our students and aligning their actions and policies with the NGSS. All of these entities have a role to play in ensuring that each and every student receives the high-quality science education to which they are entitled. So the NGSS will require everyone to move beyond the status quo, and whether these changes are considered evolutionary or revolutionary depends on one's current reality. For some educators and institutions, the distance between their vision for K-12 science and their current reality is relatively small. For others, this distance will be large. Regardless of the size of the gap, there are some actions that every stakeholder can begin to take. The first step we recommend is to conduct a self-assessment at all levels. Describing the current state of the different components in the system is an essential first step because it identifies the starting point for change. Secondly, we recommend that all stakeholders become familiar with the vision for all students outlined in the report and also in the NGSS. Understanding that vision and ultimately sharing that vision is essential to the process. In addition to sharing that vision, all components in the system must place the highest possible value on the teaching and learning of science. Science must not take a back seat to other content areas. We strongly recommend that all people in the system proactively seek out opportunities to learn as much as they can about how others are making plans for implementation of the NGSS, and this symposium is a wonderful start. Also, we must recognize that change requires action at all levels, and we all have both responsibilities and opportunities to to affect change no matter where we are in the system. Small changes can and should occur while big changes are being considered. As Margaret Mead said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. So finally, we must remind ourselves that meaningful reform requires consistent effort sustained over time. This will be especially true for the NGSS, but this will be time well spent. It is an investment in our individual and collective